Greetings. If you've been following the channel for a bit, you probably heard me talk about the idea that I had a while ago that when I lost a game that I felt like I had the potential to win, I went through and did a video like this, breaking down the sort of routes that I could have taken, the plays that I could have made, and but unfortunately that recording was lost because it was paused basically the moment it started. In fact, let's just make sure that's not happening again. So then since that time, and I originally thought that would have been really good content because it's not something I've seen anyone else do, and it might be useful. I can't guarantee that, obviously, because I'm going to do this live. So what we're going to do is watch back a game that I just played recently, so it's fairly fresh in my mind. And this is myself playing Max1 in the bottom left, up against Billy playing McCabe2 in the northeast. Now, I'm going to mute the in-game audio because it's not the focus here. So I'm going to be playing this game back at 2x speed, and we're just going to be going through and chatting about what we did, what we could have done differently, what our opponent did and what they could have done differently, and how we think that would have affected things. Now, there's a good chance we're not going to go through the entire game, because by the time you, at least when I did this last time, once you got about an hour in, once you got about halfway through the game, you'd already sort of you'd made all the choices that mattered, and you committed yourself on the board in various places. And then after that, it was simply a case of, well, that's where we are now. I guess we've got to deal with that. So you had fewer and fewer impactful choices, but we'll see. So let's get right into it. So I'm just going to press play. Now, I've sped this up to 2x. We can see that I've got a pretty awful hand early doors. So my priority here was trying to get as many reconfigures out so that Maxine could cycle those cards for me, and also to take unimpactful actions. The reason for that was that my hope in the end was to be able to do some shooting with Maxine, and I also had sort of got this idea in my head that I wanted to put the two gentlemen here. Now, I've been in fact, I will pause briefly to talk about one thing, which is that during that game, if you watch this game, you'll hear me horribly mispronounce a number of things. The Kiwi players from New Zealand have reported back in a jovial yet, prodding fashion, that I sound something between an anime character and a small child trying to impersonate a crow when saying haka. And in fact, I was saying something more like haka previously. So we need to avoid that, and I'm going to do my best to say haka. I'm going with that for now. And then the other one that was mentioned was what I was pronouncing as Mr. Nagatoro and Harata Nagatoro. And a couple of things wrong with that. One, they don't roll their R's, and two, the G is silent, and three, the vowels are a bit weird, at least to a native British speaker. So we're going to have a go. I've got my notes. What was it? It is Nutara. Nutara? That can't be right. Tara, tada, Nutara, Natara, Natara, Natara. I'm going to go with Natara. So we've got Mr. Natara and Harata Natara. But the thing that bothers me with Harata and then Natara is that you've got... Anyway, fuck it. Now, Mr. Natara and Harata Natara. And then we've got Haka. Haka? Haka. Haka. That one's gonna take some work. And then the other one is I have an upgrade that you can't quite see because it's hidden underneath the cards here, but it's one of Harata's Haka's fucking hell. And I was calling it Nigeri because again, once again, it has the silent G in it, but apparently it's Neri, or Neri, something like that. Neri. So we're going to just, say one of those a few times until it lands. Right, there you go. There's our Maori lesson for the day, and back into the game. Cool. So I decided to open up with my unimpactful actions, one of which was to go with bow, push a couple of guys up, would lead the way, and make some progress up the board while trying to cycle the rams that I had. I wanted to here leave a gap for the machinist to sort of slip through because I knew the machinist wanted to follow suit. So already we've got a line that's maybe not ideal, because I've moved up my 2 melee guys. Now, my thought was that likely we're both going to play fairly cagey. Maybe the last activation of each of us might involve some attacks, but he didn't take a Rough Rider. He didn't take anything like Kenshiro or something to punt McCabe up the board, so I didn't think he had a massive chance to get to me. It would have been a very, very bold move, but some people do choose to go for it. And from my side, it should have been essentially Maxine going last, using her bonus to push us to place herself 6 inches up the board, and then trying to take some shots. Now, one thing to note, and I'm going to pause again briefly here, is that I have forgotten to pick my polymath suit already. Now, you should have picked this the moment that initiative is flipped, and frankly, my opponent would have been well within his rights to say, I'm going to choose your suit for you because you haven't chosen it. And so whenever we notice this, I mean, what happens is now I draw a 12 and a 13 of crows. I'm sitting there with a 6 and a 3 of crows. Then I remember that my polymath hasn't been used, and of course I go, well, I'm going to stick it on crows, but it's not right at all to my opponent. And so what I probably should have done, in fact, I was about to make excuses. No, it simply wasn't right. It wasn't right. And so what you should do in that situation is either A, select a default suit. So you say, if I don't say anything, then my suit will be X. I think that was a suggestion I got from Grogdog. So you can do that. Or it's to say, if I ever forget, then my opponent gets to choose. I think that, therefore, obviously the better choice would probably be the default option, but if you forget to do that, then if you get into a situation like this, I think you should not do what I did. You should not just choose the one that suits you. You should let your opponent pick. Right, so that's polymath. Another couple of things while we're here. I will let the game run a tiny bit more. No, I won't. These might be important decisions. So I haven't played a shitload of Maxine. I've started to play a reasonable amount. I'm starting to get a bit better with using my Deep Discovery and my Polymath and my Reconfigure. But there's a few times, and we will sort of hopefully catch them in game, where I miss it or don't use it correctly. And stuff like this where I'm not in the muscle memory, exact muscle memory of, always using Maxine 1 correctly and immediately after initiative setting up my Polymath suit. But, it'll come over time. I just wanted to use this game because it was the most recent, but it's not because it's a perfect game or anything like that at all. In fact, yeah, let's get back into it. So Bo going early and chucking up these 2 guys was a potential mistake, because if my goal is to shoot at the end of the turn with Maxine, then as I already did get a little bit of feedback from other Explorers players on this game, and Grogdog was one of the ones kind enough to take a look, and he said that my turn, you'll see this turn 1 that I have here, was very timid in the end. In fact, both of us were very, very timid. We were talking about it during the game. But I now have this 12 and 13 of crows, and as you can see, it's now my polymath suit. And so I would be able to chuck Maxine up with Bo. So in other words, if one of the lead the ways was on Bo, then Maxine would be in a much better position to put some pressure on a little bit later on, or force my opponent to be even more cagey than he already was. And we've popped down the power ritual scheme with Calypso. I was going to do that regardless of whether I'd taken it or not. In this game, I did take it because I had Botanist, Orville, and Beeben Calypso. I felt like I had a reasonable chance of scoring the second point, and almost certainly going to score the first one. So I went for it. I assumed that my opponent would be taking Power Ritual as well, with his double Botanists and Huckster and Desper, and because that Huckster's there, I assumed it was probably Ensnare to go with it, and that was indeed the case. So we've now got our Machinist. I want to again be trying to cycle out some more of this crap out of my hand, and I hadn't positioned particularly well here because I'd basically cut about 2 inches off my Machinist's movement, but I didn't want to go with my big guys just yet because I wanted to threaten to attack with them if he came in very, very aggressively with either McCabe or the Echo, or indeed Desper. I don't think that could really happen from this far away. So if you are in doubt, and if you're against a very good player, and if you think, well, I can either lose a couple of inches of movement here, or I can potentially lose the game, I'd recommend taking the safer option. And that's what I was doing here. So I was playing a bit cagey. So for example, Orville down the bottom here, probably, I don't know. The question is, does he need that focus? So if Orville goes down here on his own, he's going to die. Any model that gets sent after him, unless it's just the hopeful prospect, he'll win that one-on-one, probably. But if we expect, based on his deployment, that Botanist 2 is coming down to this corner, Botanist 1's coming up to this corner, and hopeful prospect's coming with him, well, he's definitely losing that 2-on-1. In fact, he'd lose against the Botanist on its own. So, first of all, should I have been considering abandoning this plan, or should Orville have been there as sort of a roadblock to try and just slow him down and force him to take a strategy from these 3 points, and then the rest of my list comes up here? And that's basically what I decided to do. So I decided to try and control this area and have Orville just try and slow this down in the bottom right. If his job is to slow it down in the bottom right, then is it better to do a double walk, or is it better to do walk and focus? It's a question. I don't feel too bad about it. So my Beeb and Calypso, I've just been cycling cards via my Reconfigure and Max1 abilities, and then moving up with Onwards and their various movement bits to get over towards here. I decided that based on this movement and deployment that he was indeed going for Power Ritual, as was I, so it was important to get towards the corners and try and control them fairly early on, also giving me the chance to come in here, grab the strat, and then Onwards back again if I wanted to. Meanwhile, this is all a bit clogged. Of course, the map was pretty clogged, this massive L wall. An option, a hiring option, would have been to potentially take the Alpinist instead of the Botanist, but I honestly think Botanists for 5 are so ludicrously good that that even with this slight clumping issue, and even with the ability to then maneuver around here much more easily if the Alpinist's in the area, that the Botanist was probably still correct. As it was, my Botanist didn't do a ton this game, but it had the potential to do so, and it was probably better than the Alpinist. In my eyes. So my opponent has been pretty damned cagey. So he's sort of getting ready for his ensnare. He's getting ready to move into this corner and this corner. He failed almost all of his onwards and things like that, TNs, with his botanists. So that's why they haven't made it out anywhere near as far as mine. He placed down his ritual and then could only get to there because he failed the onwards. Over here, failed the onwards. And I think it was essentially a case of he had a pretty high-low hand, so he didn't want to spend a severe on it, but the other cards wouldn't do it, and he just couldn't flip it. So, yeah. Moving Calypso up to here. So we're keeping an eye on Desper. So I'm well aware that McCabe can put a blade on anything, and then that model can then go and murder Calypso. But Botanists, even with a blade, not that scary. Huckster, even with a blade, not that scary. You don't tend to put one on them, point 1. Point 2, if you do, they're dead afterwards, and that's fine for me because Beeb probably doesn't die too, and then I kill the Huckster, and then Beeb rebuilds Calypso. So not the end of the world. So the only threats you're really worried about are Desper, who doesn't even need a blade, or McCabe with a blade, or Echo with a blade. McCabe with a blade chasing Calypso around is a dream. Echo is the one that could actually get there clean, so you've got to be worried about Echo and worried about Desper. Now Desper immediately starts to move up towards Calypso, and so we've got the two choices. So I've tried to sort of double down on this corner. He's made it very clear that he's going to come and try and counteract that. So we've now got a decision tree. We can either continue to send Calypso up here and send something else to support, or send the botanist to clog Desper up, or we can abandon ship from this corner. And now that he's committed hard with a leap walk up here, we can now go with Beeb and bring Calypso back 4-4-4 over here somewhere, and eventually start to try and sort of bring it more central. So that would probably either force Desper back into the middle, or it would force Desper to go and play a scheming game with my botanist in the corner where he's not particularly advantaged. Stat 5 versus stat 6, and armor piercing not mattering. So I'm just moving up. I'm basically moving my heavy hitters up into position at the moment. So I did Mr. Nataro, did Obey on Bow, who then did Lead the Way on Machinist. I wanted to bring the Machinist aura up. It's really, really, really important against McCabe because almost everything he has is an aura. So his extended reach, his cursed objects from items, his lifesteal from mask, all of this stuff is aura related, as is the Echo's concealment aura. So ignoring 4 different things that his crew does is pretty important, and so I wanted to make that sure that Machinist was coming up. And also, I'd seen how cagey he was playing. Like, his McCabe has decided to sit back here behind a wall, so even his treasure map isn't going to push him towards me. The best it can do is push him along this line. So I'm pretty confident he's not reaching me anytime soon. And so I'm thinking, right, well, instead what I'm going to do is bring Max1 up and make them both fast. So I've got my 2 9-stone hitters. I had 2 9-stone hitters because I'd taken In Your Face, and I wanted to make sure that I had a good chance of getting it. With just Hirata, I felt that it would be, he's an enforcer. He could definitely be threatened and killed. He's got 9 health, so that's 3 min 3s, and we've got two models really capable of dishing out 3 min 3s. So I took Mr. Natoro. No, not with Natoro. Natoro. So, sorry, that's more for me than you guys, and I realise it feels a bit weird to do a linguistics session during a replay analysis, but there you go, that's what you stuck with. So, my degree was English Language and Linguistics, and I do still find it vaguely interesting. So here is where we find out that my Max1 is not within range just of doing anything useful. So I wanted to be either able to shoot the Echo using Machinist to ignore its aura, or put a shot into the Botanist. My black still wasn't out, so I had 30 cards left, which is my red still wasn't out. I had 30 cards left, so 20 gone, 30 left, 5 visible, and we knew that one of these was the red. Now, is that a good chance of hitting the red? No, absolutely not. But is it a chance? And if the red came through, it would be 6 damage into a Botanist, thus sort of ending his career before it began. And I feel that that would have been a nice thing to do. Echo, meanwhile, was out of line of sight of Ducat. This was something that was pointed out to me. So Echo would have been tricky to heal twice, and healing him once for 1, 2, 3 is either going to cost you a severe and a movement and an activation, or it's not going to be, unless they get lucky, it's going to be a heal of 1 or 2 or something like that. So I realized that I wanted to hand out fast to my boys. My other option would be to walk and take 1 shot and then be in range of a double focused Echo or a double focused McCabe with Max1 the following turn. Now, of course, I've got Bowfishbocker, she's got Polymath, and I've got some stones, but I've only got 3 stones. I was pretty stone light this game. I didn't love putting Max1 out with her trousers down immediately. That said, looking back on the game, so if you put your Polymath suit as masks, then you are somewhat safe from the Echo, because that's the only trigger that really matters. It's the one that gives him the additional attack. So putting it on mask or Rams against McCabe, both of those could be decent. And if I was hitting now with the 13 or 12 of Crows, then I would be able to declare my Polymath trigger, my X trigger, and therefore draw back one of the cards that was flipped during the action. So there's a reasonable chance that I'd be able to get back a decent card. It wouldn't be the 12 or 13, because I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, the X trigger, the Polymath trigger, is a card flipped, not a card cheated. So you can't just cheat a 13 of Crows and then go, right, well, that was part of the duel, I'm going to grab that back. No, it doesn't need to be flipped, I'm pretty confident. But still, your chances of flipping a severe are reasonable, especially when my original hand was so bad. Anyway, we didn't do that. We moved up. We took another focus with Max1 herself. We gave fast to the 2 Natara guys, and we moved up a bit so that now I was in a much better position to be aggressive. Previously, as we saw, was not. So, I've got better control of the strategy markers here. He's sort of hiding behind a wall and behind a forest. I've got 1 Botanist within range to already grab and run away with the strategy marker. I've got Orville a bit faster and closer than the prospect to either of the strategy markers, and I've got my whole crew near the center too here. So feeling good position-wise, and obviously I've got 2 extra AP on him this turn so far. Now, of course, he's playing McCabe, so in general, he's got plenty of AP via his fast chains that he can use. Yeah, we'll see. But for now, I'm still thinking sort of how and when can I leverage Maxine to start shooting either Desper the Botanist or Echo. Those seem to be my prime targets. I'd like to get to the Huckster, but she's got cover, and it would be very hard to get around that without melting. So I won the initiative. I won the initiative a lot this game. That was lucky. And I had Billy go first because there was nothing happening. We were still sort of tiptoeing around and waiting for the engagement. This time I go with the double walk instead of the walk focus with Orville, just to put him in a position to threaten and be annoying. And because in my head, I already had the focus and could do a severe 4 to the hopeful prospect if I wanted to. I'd forgotten that he had hard to kill, so that wouldn't have actually worked. But I was thinking I don't need double focus and I need to be in the right position. So we're now both doing essentially what we did in turn 1. We're burning our not very important activations and ones which are very predictable anyway. It's obvious that the Botanists are going to the corner. It doesn't give your opponent any information to do it. And he's measured out carefully so that he's outside of charge range of Orville there. So yeah, so we're looking at these sort of still very sort of tiptoe stages of the game. And I think we're both still just a bit afraid of the output possible, because the two Nataro guys can do a hell of a lot of damage if you walk into them, and if you get anywhere near Harata, then Harata. Shit, there's another question. Anyway, if you get near Harata, then you are then on negatives to willpower attacks, and Maxine's melee is a willpower attack, and you've got, of course, got Mr. Narata's obey to worry about as well. So if anything that comes in is going to get really, really melted. But in the same fashion, if I go in there, he's got an Echo with a blade, and McCabe, who could easily get one, plus he's already got a mirror, I would get mulched as well. So we're both pretty careful about this. So yeah. I decide not to commit Calypso to the corner because I don't want Desper to be able to just hold on to my Calypso for free, and I want to force him, if he wants to bring Desper in to kill Calypso, I want it to be a trade, and I'm pretty confident the Botanist cannot trade effectively with Desper. He can do some damage and might eventually bother him, and can certainly sort of... Desper's not going to do a whole lot to the Botanist, but no the other way around. So... I now bring Harata up to put up his... No, I don't, sorry. I decided that I had two choices. I could either start activating one of my meaningful models, which would then sort of reduce the threat to any of his models that wanted to come in, the threat that we were just discussing, or I could give up my opportunity to heal them back later this turn. So I decided to give that up because it felt like we were going very, very cagey again, and that anything that was getting attacked would probably not be one-rounded. When you've got Deep Discovery and a 13 in hand and Defense 6 on a couple of your key models, I think there's a reasonable chance he's going to miss an attack. So... decided to go with Bo, give up healing for now. Unfortunately, I did get Bo kind of blocked behind this wall, and it is a push to follow the lead the way. So Bo's positioning was could have been a bit better. Sort of, have I paused it? No, cool. If Bo, had a bit more space to work with, then could have been up closer and therefore within range of the Cloak and Dagger marker for next round. So, still not a lot happening here. We're taking a hell of a long time with these early turns because neither of us were really expecting the game to be this cagey. I think both of us thought the other person will be aggressive, I'll be cagey, and then I will take advantage of that situation. We both did that, and then we're both sitting there thinking, oh crap, I didn't decide what to do if we were both cagey, and sort of had to rethink plans live, as it were. So what's going to happen here is my opponent is going to put Desper up into here. I think basically he decided he didn't want to commit for Calypso for the reasons I mentioned, which is if he goes for Calypso, I'll turn it into a trade, and I'm happy with it. So instead, he moves Desper up into this forest, ready to take action either on the corner for ritual or the strategy marker, and then takes another focus for future turns, so that he can be more impactful. Now, the fact that Desper is now up here and activated, so can't really be saved, too far away from Ducat to be healed, I work out that of the three, so these are the three that I was thinking about as my shooting target, well, suddenly Echo is quite difficult to ignore his cover, unless I put myself over here or something, and I really have to sort of commit, whereas on Desper I can immediately place with my bonus and take 3 shots. 2 will ignore concealment with focus, and if I want to take the third one, I can stone to ignore the concealment there. So we're going to unload onto Desper. I think, make an error here with my not having the discard suits that I needed. And so I think I had to use them from my opponent or something like that. So I think that's what I'm checking now. I had to, with my opponent. Yeah, so I take them from my opponent's deck in order to get the 2 weeks of the correct suit. Yeah. But it looks like someone mentioned in a YouTube comment that we perhaps forgot to shuffle in that 3 and... Yeah, so it looks like we forgot to shuffle in the 3 and 5 of Rams. Which is sad, because I think I said it. I could turn the sound back on and find out, but who cares? I think I said it, but yeah, I managed to get a 13 at my opponent. I spend one of mine, which I was planning to spend anyway. Annoyingly, I'm on Rams here because I was in the center and I was worried about McCabe coming in, so I wanted to block off his Crack the Whip. Plus, I knew I had a few Rams in hand, but given this line of play, it would obviously have been much better for me to be on Crows, so I didn't really get any triggers off here, but I am doing solid damage. My opponent's having to stone. I basically end up using a combination of my high cards and then some of his high cards to keep landing these attacks and putting good solid pressure onto Desper, which means that Desper, instead of stealing my stones and then being useful or sort of forcing a trade out afterwards, now here's what I'll just pause very briefly. My opponent's just cheated the 12 of Rams. Max1 is on Rams, and so in theory he's just cheated a card with a value of 1. Now obviously I'd never hold him to that, but it made his 12 basically useless in this exchange, and so it was a bit of a shame that I forgot about Polymath there. But if you're planning to play Max1 1, be very, very aware that you basically have to track your hand, their hand, if you know anything about it, your discard pile and their discard pile, and your various suits as well. So there's a lot going on. It's one of the reasons why I really enjoy the crew. It's a very challenging crew with a very high ceiling. How long have we been going? Not quite half an hour. So I think we'll probably carry on for a bit longer. There's definitely a lot more decision points to be made. So here, I was thinking about whether I could get Beeb up to Calypso. So I had another AP here, and I could either spend a stone to get around concealment and take an unfocused attack into Desper. But I knew that I couldn't use his 12 of Rams because he had focus, so he could spend that focus to flip 2 cards, and the one that was lower would be the one that was discarded. It would be the top of his discard pile. So defending with focus is a very good way to get around Max1's crew deep discovery options, because if he didn't spend focus, I'd be able to use that 12 of Rams and not only be on 18, but also have my Polymath suit. So instead what I did was I gave Beeb and Calypso fast. Calypso ready for next round and Beeb all ready for this round. Reason being, now with Onward and fast, Beeb can actually move over Max1 and then go there and then charge Desper and get an attack into him. And I know that I've got a reasonably high tome, and I know that obviously I can use Reconfigure or use his tomes if I see one, and then put another attack into Desper and really, really start to pressure him. And so even though this would allow Desper in, theoretically, in the next round to smack Calypso up, I'm thinking I can put Beeb in, have him smack Desper, and then I've got Mr. Natoro to Natoro. Fucking hell. Anyway, he can then come up and obey Calypso to attack again and hopefully get yet again the tome trigger. And I know that with Mr. Nataro we can do harsh teachings and give him a focus. So I'm thinking, right, this turn I've already put him onto 4, I've already burned through a couple of stones, I've already burned through a couple of his high cards. Now I can get Calypso in with 1 unfocused attack, hopefully with massive tentacles, so 2 + 1 on a week, and then a focused attack, so 2, 3, 4 + 1 with the obey attack. So I'm thinking that's really, really, really high pressure. And if he's left on 1 or something like that, then we could even bring in the botanist, give up on the strategy point from this point of view, and maybe try and score it with Harata or something like that, and finish off Desper. So really putting the pressure and trying to pile it on Desper, punish his stone count, and also one of the main reasons I was doing this was because I wanted to take control of this corner. I was very, very confident now that he had Power Ritual, and I wanted to try and deny it from one corner of the map, so that if I could take over this corner fast enough and then leave my markers here ready for scoring, I could then move towards his corner, remove this scheme here, and be ready to deny Ritual, because I'm denying 2 of the corners of the map, even if he then makes it round to my corner, which I was pretty confident he could. So yeah, we're going in with the bead plan. And I think oh yeah, so I did hit him, got him with a moderate, it looks like, which was pretty damn useful. He got the mod on the stone, so yeah, from 4 health down to 2, I think. Yeah, 4 health down to 2, and now I know that we're ready to go with Mr. Nataro for the obey, to try and basically put that pressure on and really, really, really eat into his stones, and try to kill Desper. Because with massive tentacles, we're going to be doing 2, hopefully, plus 1. So basically, he has to stone the 2. If he doesn't get the full stone on the 2 and he takes 1 damage, then the 1 from Massive Tentacles would kill him, so he'd have to stone again. But he's only got 1 stone left. So essentially, that 1 attack could kill him, and then I could get a very free and clean strategy token and be ready to score Ritual. So that has become the real focus of my game at this point. All my resources are going into this area, and so all I want to do with this area is sort of hold it down and threaten it. And so making it less appealing for McCabe to come in immediately. Now, Machinist does have flush with cash. One of the reasons I'm not using my stones very much is because I know that I need to keep him alive, or at least make it very unappealing to spend Master AP on him. So the Machinist being quite that far up is a bit concerning. But it's a fine balance, because he needs to be within 3 to actually needs to be within 3 to be effective, right? So yeah. So at this point, I'm having a look at Mr. Nataro has fast, so I'm trying to figure out where I can get the value from his 3rd AP. I know I want to do a walk and an obey, but I'm thinking what to do with the 3rd one. So my original thought was to obey the botanist so that he could then move up ready to immediately grab strat onwards to here and score Power Ritual all in one go, which would have been really, really clean. And if I was able to do that, then the following turn he drops the next Power Ritual and starts moving over towards this corner. So that would have been really, really sweet. But instead, I couldn't get the line of sight and also the range to Calypso. I'd moved Calypso up a bit too far, honestly. He could have been down here and made my life easier. But anyway, he was all the way up here. And so I couldn't get line of sight to both him and the botanist, so we go with plan B, which is to move up even further and basically be able to put threat onto this botanist. And also I'm aware now, because the moment he puts the shadow marker here by healing with Ducat, we know that the Echo is moving in this direction. So one of the downsides of Echo with and using your shadow markers is that if you don't have a bunch of them, if you just have basically 1 or 2 shadow markers, then your Echo activation is really, really telegraphed. So we're aware that this Blade Echo is coming up to polish off our Calypso, and so we want to be able to sort of threaten back with Mr. Nataro and really start to control this top left corner. I've sort of committed to that play, and I want to see it through. I am, in my mind here, eyeballing. Unfortunately, when we get to it, I realise I can't do it. But in my head, I was eyeballing a 5-inch walk to about here, a 5-inch walk to about here, and then a 5-inch charge to about here, and then being within 2 inches of the huckster. And my thought was, if I use the haka of Neri, then Neri is the defensive one, so Peru. Then that is the one that says if you fail by 3 or more in an opposed duel with this model, then you take 1 damage. And I was thinking, his hand is getting low. If we manage to burn it out on all of the other duels, and then we go with Hirata last, and we get in and just smack the huckster with focus, and essentially deal 5 from the attack and 1 from either infect or from Peru, then we basically remove the huckster. That makes ensnare much harder for him, and gets rid of a significant model, and threatens to kill Luna, engages Ducat, and so on and so forth. Possibly brings McCabe back to deal with that. So I was thinking that's a really good play for me. I want my botanist, Mr. Natoro, and Maxine and Beeb and Calypso up here, dealing with his botanist, Desper, and Echo, and then my Hirata comes into the back line here and makes a mess, and meanwhile Bo probably ends up doing some scheming and trying to keep, whoever alive. Machinist just provides the aura. Meanwhile, Orville should be down here playing, slow them down. My idea with Orville, sorry, I keep popping the player up, but, if I put the mouse over, then that's what happens. So the idea with Orville was to basically walk charge in such a way to land him about here, which would then engage the botanist, and the botanist doesn't have a way of disengaging that allows him to then interact. So yeah, engage the botanist, and in my head, kill the prospect. So Severe 4, kill the prospect, and then engage the botanist. But Made to Kill would have left the prospect on 1, but engaged, so it would have probably been it would have been a good move, but what you'll see is that my opponent sort of jumps on exactly the same principle and comes in and uses the botanist with a trigger to one-shot Orville, really freeing up this corner for him and some scoring opportunities. So yeah, the bottom right corner was also pretty impactful. And my dream team idea of getting Hirata into his backline didn't end up working out because I didn't have the reach to get to the huckster, even with fast. So you could argue that Hirata should have stayed maybe somewhere nearby in order to just sort of keep scoring strategy. But I was concerned that he was going to get engaged by McCabe, who is one of the models that's very capable of killing him. And I thought I could do more with him up top, as we will see as we get to it. I've got this replay running at 2x speed, but it doesn't seem to be quite fast enough. So I'm going to skip ahead a tiny bit and we'll see what happens. So Echo comes in and kills the Calypso. Despera takes a point from the Demise, Echo as well, and the Botanist. We've forgotten that Botanists don't have 7 health, so they're all showing with 7 health, but they should be on 6. We do notice at some stage and fix it. And then the Echo goes again, smacks Beeb with last activation. I spend a while thinking about it and eventually just let it go through, so Beeb takes some damage. I figure if he lives and gets to activate, he'll jump into Calypso anyway, and if he doesn't, well then, he's as good as dead regardless whether he's got 6 or 3, really. So this is where I made a bit of a mistake in my eyes, so I'm going to pause here. No, I won't, because it's been going too slowly so far, not too quickly. So the Botanist came in and I decided to grab my strategy, score my point, great stuff, and then charge the Echo because his hand was very, very strained, and I couldn't get to Desper with that attack, and I wanted to threaten the Echo. One of the reasons for that is because I want Maxine to come in fairly soon and kill it for in your face. But what I did was I actually gave him a line of play that he chose not to take, and I've still not managed to find out why. Why he didn't just come around here with McCabe, get line of sight, and then take what you can carry, and just steal my token. So it would have denied a point and scored a point. And it's not like McCabe did a whole lot this turn anyway. So he just came up here, grabbed his strategy instead of coming up here and stealing mine, getting his in the process, sort of thing. Maybe he really wanted to bait Hirata to come in and go walk, walk, steal, so that he could then have something useful to do with McCabe for the rest of the game. That's my assumption. As you can see, we're just out here with this Hirata play. I tried to neaten it up a little bit just in case it's better, but it doesn't get there. So instead what we do is we come and try to finish off Desper. So Hirata can walk up here, and charge Desper down here. And that's what we end up doing, and we do kill Desper. Which... because the alternative is that he gets to potentially activate first, leap in and steal a couple of stones. I only have 3 stones left, and McCabe's in range of the Machinist and would be able to then murder him through flush with cash, so I really didn't want that to happen. So now we're both looking at, right, what are we going to do start of turn? And there's obviously a lot of going on here. So, for example, Echo can murder Beeb, and that will stop my... will get activation control and will mean that even if I kill the Echo, I'm not taking it off him. Down here, we've got the potential botanist Orville situation that we discussed. So obviously I want to go in and engage him, and he wants to come in and kill me. Then we've got his upgrade chains. So anything that I do that gives him time would allow him to get an upgrade chain going. We've got McCabe threatening Bow and Machinist to some extent. And then, of course, from my side, I could at any time bring Max1, teleport to about here and just shoot Luna off the table, so he's got to be aware of that sort of activation control possibility that would also shut down some upgrade options, especially since one of the things he didn't do very well this game was have Corpse and Scrap anywhere near McCabe. There really weren't a lot of options for him there. So in the end, what happens is I win the initiative. I go with Beeb, I injure him and bring Calypso back. It takes me a minute to work out how that all works, because honestly I only hire Calypso when I don't think he's going to die, so he doesn't often die, but he did, and so he gets rebuilt. So this is where I'm pretty sure, yeah, immediately he comes in, he cheats for the trigger, he cheats for the severe damage to do 4 total and kills Orville. One of the better plays of the game, that. It's maybe didn't, because now Hirata can kill this botanist. He's got 6 health and I've got min 3, right? So you've got to be thinking, you know, maybe I just lose a botanist for this. And if he didn't get exactly the, like, if I just cheated high with Orville, if I just put a 12 or a 13 in there, then he doesn't have the card probably to get that trigger and actually get the kill. So if he didn't get the kill, it would have either had to spend another severe hitting me again or something like that, or I don't even know if he had the AP for that. So it would have been really, really high pressure if that had gone wrong, but since it went right, it was amazing. Other option is, if he, yeah, I mean, yeah. He had a few options, but I think that was a really, really solid play. That was quite game-changing. So our options here, I want to kill Echo, but I want to do it with Max1 within 3 inches, and I don't want to give him a chance to leave. I also want to kill that botanist before he gets a chance to activate if at all possible, and so Hirata going into botanist should have been the priority here from my side, in my opinion. I think I was worried that he would have a 13 in hand that Hirata would miss, and that I would thusly be screwed. We worked this, so, but in the end, I think I went for it, because either I get a 13 out of his hand for a botanist, which is better than eating a 13 and for potentially like having my botanist killed by his Echo if it's the 13 of masks, for example. And also, I didn't want him to be able to just grab a strategy token and bugger off. Since the only other person that could then do strategy for him this turn really is McCabe, and if McCabe's doing walk interact in the range of people that can steal it from him, I'm delighted. So Hirata comes in, pops up the Haka, and goes for it. He pops in a 12. I decide to meet him there for the poison. And now I'm finding myself doing more of a play-by-play, so I think we might end up pausing the game here. And we're just going to talk out the sort of remaining choices. So, because the choices are what matter, not the results. We're not looking at, you know, what cards were flipped or what happened to happen. We're looking at what were the correct lines of play, what were the correct choices. So I took a line of play to commit to this corner hard. I took a line of play to try to commit Orville to delaying here rather than having him sit back here. I think it was correct. I think the Orville being down here was correct. And and had I managed to pull off that delay play, then it would have been very, very impactful as well, in the same way that his kill was very impactful. I think the change that I could have made to my play was to commit harder to keeping him alive, so was to putting in that high card to really try and defend him. But I think I just didn't credit my opponent with the will to spend the amount of resources that he did to kill Orville. And even if he did, I wasn't sure that I would be that pissed about it, because I knew Orville was dying. It was a case of how fast. But actually now, having seen the game, it would have probably been worth my time and a high card, especially since my crew has so much cardmancy. So, was committing the majority of my crew to this top left correct for me? Yes, it probably was. I think Maxine needed to be more aggressive turn one. I needed to make more use of my cards. Holding on to Severes with a crew that basically can make every card kind of effectively severe is not good. You want to make sure that you're pumping out your cards into damage. So I wanted to be tickling his Botanist, Desper, Echo, whatever, early doors, and maybe even threatening to just one-shot Luna early in the game. So Maxine needed to be coming up faster and being more aggressive with that. Then committing to the top left, committing to the Desper kill was fine. There was a little bit of card luck there. I think there was a reasonable chance that Desper could die more cleanly, and if he did, then it would have been easier for me to sort of clean up here, and I needed to clean up to then be able to leave my ritual schemes and leave in order to try and deny his ritual and score the second point of mine. Now obviously if he'd reached my corner, then he removes mine. I don't get the second point anyway, but neither does he, so that's kind of all right. In terms of hiring, so the Mr. Natoro and Hirata Natoro were... I think Hirata was a good choice. It allowed some Maxine pressure. He did good work damage-wise. But the versatile, I mean, he's not in keyword, and Maxine really does love her keyword, and I know that I wanted 2 9-cost models so that I could have the in-your-face second point, and I do score that this game. I do end up scoring the first point on Echo somewhere here soon, and then I do get Hirata over to his deployment at the end, so I do get both points. Was it necessary? Don't know. Right. I hope you found this useful. This was certainly less... in the previous game, I had a lot of revelations and like, wow, I'm definitely going to try and, approach this differently and do this differently. But that didn't quite happen this time around. But I think there were enough things where I can go, right, okay, yeah, I see little improvements. And some of it, a fair amount of it was just unpack. And it's amazing that how much just unpack can make a big difference and really snowball from there. So, if Maxine's up more aggressively turn one, then turn two, she can really threaten more easily everything in the area and maybe even force him to attack earlier than he wanted to. That would allow a really efficient counter attack and so on and so forth. So, obviously we can't know because, every action has a reaction, but yeah. So point one was Maxine up faster, and point two is that would hopefully then allow me to get a little bit more use out of these strategy markers. I think I should have been trying to punish him for only having McCabe in the area, and I should have been trying to score strategy a little bit more aggressively, forcing some movement towards the middle or forcing McCabe to do very little other than just securing strat. And then commit the card to defending Orville. It would have been worth it, and even slowing him down by 1 turn would have probably sort of threatened to score a point, possibly denied a point, etc., etc. So yeah, cool. All right. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you again soon for the next one.